What happens when the next big thing gets outshined before she even takes the crown? Juju Watkins was hailed as the future of women's basketball until Caitlin Clark flipped the script, broke records, and secured $10 million deals. Now, Juju's caught in a whirlwind of comparisons, pressure, and doubt. Is this just the beginning of her downfall, or her comeback story? Let's dive in. But before further proceeding in video, if you're new to the channel, please support by hit that subscribe button for more updates.
A lot of players in the country playing Division I basketball. Nobody scored more points in one game this year than you. That's the most.
That's crazy. Yeah. More to come for sure.
Yeah, Caitlin Clark who?
No, don't do that.
Okay.
Don't do that.
Juju Watkins wasn't just another promising athlete. She was anointed as the future face of women's basketball. A once-in-a-generation talent armed with unshakable confidence, relentless work ethic, and raw, electrifying skill. She had the blueprint of greatness etched into her game. But instead of conquering the spotlight, she's found herself engulfed in a whirlwind of controversy. The trajectory that once pointed towards superstardom has been derailed, not by injury, but by emotion. Juju's current slump feels less like a temporary dip and more like a collapse of her own making, born out of envy, irritation, and a resistance to accepting Caitlin Clark's meteoric ascent. The pressure to live up to her hype didn't just weigh on her, it cracked her.
Yep, good, push, yep, sail, yep, good, all the way through, yeah, good, nice. Good, yep, front, good, yep, tap, yep, right there, yeah, those feet, yep, have it, yep, push, in and out, good, yep, 1, 2, 4. Not bad. And the whole thing you're trying to do is put your head under the rim.
From the very beginning, the comparisons were bound to happen. Caitlin Clark was rewriting the rules of the game, shattering records with effortless range and icy poise, while Juju Watkins was stumbling through inconsistency and unmet expectations. And now, rather than being celebrated for her immense potential, Juju is becoming a cautionary tale. Headlines no longer praise her game, they question her mindset. Her name is making waves not for buzzer beaters or triple doubles, but for on-court outbursts, cryptic interviews, and missed opportunities. The narrative has shifted, and not in her favor.
You're getting some aerobic fitness in. Good. I need
At this point, it's no longer just about jump shots and highlight reels. It's a battle of character, resilience, and legacy. The greatest error Juju Watkins made wasn't missing a shot or losing a game. It was allowing the outside noise to become her internal soundtrack. Instead of channeling Caitlin Clark's dominance as fuel, she allowed the rivalry to spiral into resentment. The frustration seeped into her performance, her body language, and even her public persona. And in a world where image and marketability are currency, losing control of your narrative can be the most costly turnover of all.
Great Ann Myers said one thing: enjoy it. Don't lose sight of the fun. Now, it was easy for me to embrace that and grasp that because I didn't have the social media like you do. I didn't have everybody coming out of the woodwork and the tags and the money and everything else and those attractions, and the lights were always bright.
The murmurs have grown louder. Fans are whispering, analysts are dissecting, and sponsors are hesitating. The question now hangs heavy in the air. Does Juju Watkins have the mental toughness to shoulder the weight of greatness? Can she block out the noise and reclaim her path? Or is she standing at the edge of a cliff, seconds away from squandering a dream she's been chasing since childhood? This isn't just a rocky season. This could be the pivotal moment where her story is rewritten, for better or for worse.
Here, put your head under the rim, so now she can't track you, right? She got to try to come through your body and the rim.
Juju Watkins wasn't just hyped, she was historic. A Los Angeles prodigy who didn't just play high school ball, she dominated it. At Sierra Canyon, she wasn't dropping buckets, she was dropping jaws. With 30, 40, even 50-point games that felt effortless, she turned packed gyms into her personal stage. Her game was a symphony of skill, deep threes, fearless drives, clutch defense. A true do-it-all superstar. When college recruiters came knocking, every elite program lined up. But Juju had other plans. She chose to stay home and resurrect USC, an underdog mission that instantly became the stuff of Hollywood scripts. The hometown phenom leading a struggling giant back to glory. The spotlight was on, The expectations sky high, and for a moment, it seemed like she was ready to carry it all.
Tense physical game down to the very end. What gave your team the edge?
Man, I feel like we're underrated at this point.
Juju Watkins had the path laid out before her like a royal procession. The next iconic figure in women's college basketball. The heir to legends like Cheryl Miller and Lisa Leslie. The torch was practically in her hand. This was her era, her moment to dominate the court and define a generation. She was expected not just to compete, but to command. Headlines had already written themselves, the rise of Juju. But then, Caitlin Clark happened, and suddenly, everything changed. The game didn't wait. Instead of stepping easily into the spotlight as the face of the sport, Watkins found herself caught in a whirlwind, not just of competition, but of comparison. Clark wasn't just playing ball. She was setting the court on fire. While Watkins was still finding her rhythm, Clark was already rewriting the history books in real time. You could almost hear the shift, the sound of expectations snapping and reattaching themselves to a different name. Overnight, Watkins wasn't the most talked about player in the room. She wasn't the main character anymore. That kind of shift, it can shake even the steadiest athlete. South Carolina tipped off, the arena roared, and there was Clark, launching a three from the parking lot and burying it like it was scripted. She made the impossible look inevitable. And Juju? Juju was left chasing a narrative that no longer belonged to her. Because there are great players, and then there are game changers. From the second Caitlin Clark laced up for her first college game, it was obvious. She wasn't just good. She was a movement. She wasn't just draining deep threes. She was dragging national attention into arenas that had long been ignored. She moved with a fire that scorched doubters and rewrote expectations. Limitless range, relentless hustle, an alpha mentality that declared, "This is my court." Watching her play wasn't just exciting, it was electric. It felt like witnessing a revolution, one logo three-pointer at a time. And that's when Juju's story began to shift, not on the stat sheet, but in the spotlight. She had all the tools, elite footwork, handles, defense that made scorers hesitate, a mid-range jumper that belonged on highlight reels. Stephen A. Smith called her the most polished college player he'd seen in years, and he wasn't wrong. Juju had the game. What she didn't have, suddenly, was the narrative. Because while she was rising, Caitlin Clark was soaring. Watkins wasn't just competing anymore. She was being measured. Constantly. Unfairly. Ruthlessly. And that kind of pressure? It doesn't always push you forward. At first, the noise was just that, background chatter. The usual drama that comes with being a prodigy. But as Clark's star burned brighter, the comparisons got louder. They followed Juju everywhere. Into the post-game interviews, onto her social feed, through every commentator's breath. And somewhere along the way, Watkins stopped using it as fuel. She let it in. It started to shape her game, cloud her mindset, and chip away at her confidence. Not because she wasn't great, but because greatness, in this sport, had suddenly been redefined. And the world was watching. She started to tighten up. Body language stiffened. Post-game interviews got icy. There were side eyes and sharp replies when Clark's name came up. Subtle tells at first, but unmistakable over time. The frustration wasn't just internal anymore. It was visible, and it was human. Because how do you shine when the spotlight keeps shifting away from you, no matter how brightly you perform? Juju Watkins didn't fall, not completely, but she stumbled in the face of something few athletes ever have to face, becoming a phenom in the shadow of another. And that's the paradox she lives in now. One of the most skilled, dynamic, and exciting players in college basketball, trapped in a narrative she didn't write. But here's the thing about spotlights, they move. And if Juju Watkins decides to reclaim hers, not with words, but with dominance, the story isn't over. It's just getting good. There were stretches on the court when it became painfully obvious. Juju Watkins wasn't herself. The swagger that once defined her play had given way to visible tension. Missed shots weren't just missed. They were followed by furrowed brows, clenched fists, and head shakes that spoke volumes. Defensive breakdowns popped up where they didn't belong, almost out of character. Her body language screamed frustration, and if you looked closely, the energy around her had shifted. Something wasn't right. In basketball, confidence is a currency, and when it starts to dwindle, even in small amounts, it can spiral. What began as subtle cracks in the armor were quickly perceived as gaping holes. I'm sure you've been asked about Juju, one reporter began. But what was going through your mind when she went down? Sick to my stomach, came the reply. I didn't even watch the video. I can't. Stuff like that just makes me ill. You feel for her. I've been there. That kind of injury, at that moment in the season, while chasing a championship. It's the worst. It's pure devastation. And just like that, the narrative began to evolve. As Juju's struggles mounted, the media machine kicked into high gear. Every stumble, every off night, every side-eye or sigh was magnified. Cameras zoomed in. Commentators speculated. What was wrong with Watkins? Why did she seem so rattled? Why did her light, once so bright, appear dimmed? Meanwhile, on the other side of the spotlight, Caitlin Clark continued her ascent. Every record-breaking performance Clark delivered was matched with a social media frenzy, and with it came a flurry of side-by-side comparisons. Clark's highlight reel was climbing. Juju's reel? It was becoming a cautionary tale. Even in moments meant to uplift, Watkins couldn't seem to escape the cloud. I talked to DeMar last night, an interviewer said, and asked him what makes you special. Watkins lit up. He said, her hunger, her drive to be great, her attention to detail, her preparation. Watched her since the 8th grade. No ego, but a killer instinct when it's time to win. She's one of one. She smiled, eyes glistening. That just makes my day. To hear that from someone like him, from LA like me, it means the world. But words of affirmation couldn't drown out the noise. Clips went viral of Juju seeming irritated at press conferences, rolling her eyes when Clark's name came up, giving answers that analysts dissected like forensic scientists searching for signs of bitterness or insecurity. And the more the public saw her react, the more they believed she was unraveling. Instead of silencing critics with her game, Juju was unintentionally handing them ammunition. Rather than embracing the spotlight and using it as fuel, she appeared overwhelmed by its heat. In sports, perception is everything. Once fans begin to believe a player is mentally shaken, it's a hard narrative to reverse. Juju wasn't just fighting her opponents anymore. She was fighting the story being told about her. She was no longer the generational talent taking the league by storm. She was becoming the cautionary example, proof of how quickly the court of public opinion can turn. When asked about her interests beyond basketball, acting, music, entertainment, she smiled again. I wish I could do what Flaujae does, she laughed. She's got bars. Me? Not so much. There was a charm there, a lightness. But it was fleeting. Because the truth was, she wasn't proving her doubters wrong. She was feeding the fire. Instead of letting the competition elevate her, she seemed consumed by it. And in a culture where athletes are idolized one day and vilified the next, the consequences extended beyond her on-court play. Brands began to notice. In the nil era, image matters just as much as ability. Fans and sponsors want more than just talent. They want poise, charisma, resilience. Caitlin Clark checked every box. She was winning games and winning hearts, her image polished and widely adored. Her jersey was flying off shelves, her name boosting ticket sales and driving viewership. Watkins, on the other hand, was facing the opposite trend. Instead of being must-see TV, she was becoming the subject of debate. Could she handle the pressure? Was she unraveling? Was she letting the weight of comparison define her? And that kind of talk doesn't just bruise a reputation. It affects marketability. It affects deals. It affects everything. In a candid moment, she joked about her childhood, how she played every sport imaginable. Soccer, gymnastics, even tennis. For like a week, laughter followed. But beneath the humor was a reminder, she's still a kid, trying to figure it all out. So where does she go from here? The talent is undeniable. No one questions that. But talent alone won't rewrite her story. To reclaim her narrative, she has to flip the script, not just for the media, but for herself. She has to stop reacting to the noise and start responding with her game. The path to redemption is still open, but it requires a mindset shift. She has to prove she's not running from the pressure, she's built to handle it. When asked who the coolest player she ever trained with was, she paused. James Harden, she said. Watching how he moves, how he thinks the game, it just gets you thinking differently. Makes you want to level up. That's the spark she needs. That mindset. That growth. Because if she doesn't change the way she's approaching this moment, she risks becoming a what could have been. And in the brutal world of sports, that label sticks longer than any stat line. At some point, the cameras will turn back on her. The question is, will she be ready? Because right now, Caitlin Clark is setting the pace. And unless Juju Watkins finds her fire again, the world won't wait. It never does. Juju Watkins still has time to flip the script, but it's going to take focus, maturity, and a whole lot of mental toughness. Can she rise above the noise, or will Caitlin Clark continue to run the game uncontested? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.